yes, when we first fall in love, we generally will only see the similarities, and we generally do not see the differences between us. And while that's a beautiful part of falling in love, when the rose-colored glasses come off and we actually start to see the differences between us, a lot of people struggle with that and think, actually, where has my beloved gone? They've actually been hijacked by someone who I don't know. But in actual fact, they're actually just starting to see the whole of that person. And so I guess in understanding the differences between us and realizing that differences are important because they give us an opportunity and an energy, if we can actually, in a safe way and a respectful way, work to transform those differences. Those same differences can actually propel a relationship forward in the direction that we want it to go.
She has 18 years as a psychologist. She's mastered how to turn conflict into closeness using energy awareness and ritualized dialogue. We're on the best-selling author podcast, which is owned by Pat Mesiti, and experts like Melanie show you how to create conscious relationships that actually thrive. Melanie is recently published with Mr. Pat Mesiti in a book called The Turning Point, and we're here just to talk about energy exchanges, making it work as a couple, struggles in relationships, conflict resolution, and so much more. Melanie's seen it. We all need help in some areas. So if you've just been struggling, the same old thinking, same old patterns, you definitely need to pay very close attention to the advice Melanie has today. So Melanie, glad to see you. Glad to be speaking with you.
Thank you, Robert. Good to be speaking with you too.
Yeah, we're both just happy and excited, and so we introduced you a little bit, but what are you all about? What did I leave out of that introduction? What just has you so focused and passionate and excited?
I think the thing that makes me most passionate about like life, I guess, is to be the best version of ourselves. And I guess for myself in my own journey through life, that has always been a very big part of who I am. And so I think enabling or supporting other people to actually be the best versions of themselves too is something I'm really passionate about. And that very much links into the psyche for me and understanding the psyche, because I think that is one of the most important parts of who we are. And in understanding that, then that actually enables you to either thrive in your life or just survive in your life.
Ooh, and the choice is up to you, isn't it? You figure when you go out in the woods and you see a squirrel running around and they go and they catch a nut, that's just what they do, right? They can't help it. They're not thinking, what's life all about? What are my goals and aspirations? But then us humans, we can think about our thinking, right? We have this potential, and it's up to us
That's
whether we want to squander it or figure some of these things out, right? Because we all have our circumstances, right? Some people have bad luck. They've started at a bad point in life. Maybe it's gotten worse, but hey, now it's time to do the work and make a change. And so you mentioned about these ideas like becoming your best self and looking into the psyche. And so what do we need to know? If someone says, I'm capable of more, or I'm miserable, or I self-sabotage, or all these problems, what's a good starting point to wake up and to make a change?
I think the most important thing and the first thing is to actually learn to observe yourself. So, and it's not to judge, it's learn to actually observe, what am I doing? So to take note of what's happening for you and to start to see the areas that you would like to change, and also by actually starting to observe, noticing patterns or cycles that are happening for you, and also by actually investigating those particular things, starting to understand what those blocks are and how you are activated, and how those things then play into you continuing in a pattern or actually then being able to step out of something.
Ooh, well, powerful. So you're saying self-awareness and look at the cycles, and one of those lead to, one of those trigger you to, and you've had 18 years at this, right? You've dealt with all people from all walks of life. Do you usually get a similar answer to this question or issue? When you tell someone, hey, look, what are you doing? What are your repeat patterns? Do you get similar answers, or is it all across the board?
Um, probably probably similar answers. I think the thing that people often will say to me is that they don't know how to change. They don't know they know something's going on and they know they're unhappy, but they don't know what the cause is, and they haven't actually been able to identify or pinpoint actually what is it that is actually causing their unhappiness or causing them to feel stuck in their lives. And I think the self-awareness to actually start to look and observe and investigate, it's very different to judging, because when we are stuck in something, we often judge ourselves. And so when we judge, it leads to us closing down. And so when we close down, there's no ability for us to stay open to what's actually going on for us. And once we can actually stay open and observe without judgment, then we can start to notice things. And when we notice those things, that's when we can actually start to change. But I guess, yes, I do find that people generally say, no, I don't know how to change. I can't do it. It's because of my circumstances, because this has happened to me. And I'm not denying that some of the things that I hear are absolutely terrible. Some of the things, it's incredible to even see that someone's actually to survive some of the things that people go through. But I don't, what I sort of say to people is that don't let circumstances define who you are. I don't believe that we have to let that happen. We can change how we think about things. We can change how we feel about things. And even though we can't change what's happened to us, we can definitely have the power to then go on with our lives in a different way than maybe what we've grown up with or what we've experienced previously. But we can transform our lives. We can transform the energy of what's happened to us, and actually, yeah, be completely different to whatever we thought we could be.
That's encouraging. That's inspiring that change can happen. And of course, you can't change the past, but you can change the future. And it seems like some of us suffer from the curse of uniqueness, right? You think, oh, I'm the only one with this situation. And I'm so afraid to unpack this, dig in. But then you look at other perspectives, other people's stories, other situations, and you say, hey, this person was like me, or this person had it way worse than me, and it makes it you start to develop some of these solutions, right? And also what is sometimes helpful is thinking that, well, it's not all about you, right? You don't exist in a vacuum. There are other people in your life, people you interact with, and sometimes it's, if you're not careful, you project or you pass on the negativity to others. And my understanding is that you help out couples or people in relationships. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Because sure, there is that aspect of like my own issues and baggage and my own problems, but there's also the relations with others, isn't there?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And I think the important thing is that when you come into a relationship, there's an energy exchange that happens. So we have our conditioning and we have all of the things that make up who we are to that point. And we actually, when we come together, we have, I guess, differences between us. And everyone's going to have differences because we haven't grown up with the same backgrounds or the same conditioning. And I guess what I do with couples is bring the awareness that, yes, when we first fall in love, we generally will only see the similarities, and we generally do not see the differences between us. And while that's a beautiful part of falling in love, when the rose-colored glasses come off and we actually start to see the differences between us, a lot of people struggle with that and think, actually, where has my beloved gone? They've actually been hijacked by someone who I don't know. but in actual fact, they're actually just starting to see the whole of that person. And so I guess in understanding the differences between us and realizing that differences are important because they give us an opportunity and an energy, if we can actually, in a safe way and a respectful way, work to transform those differences. Those same differences can actually propel a relationship forward in the direction that we want it to go. So difference is a very important part of a relationship, just as similarities are, and just as compatibility, meaning compatibility is very important as well. Differences are equally important, because if we don't have enough difference, it means that the relationship can become quite lackluster and actually have not a lot of life force to move it forward. Alternatively, if we do have too much difference, sometimes that can be too much energy for people to handle. It's sort of like too much friction, and it's like too many sparks are flying everywhere. So it's quite difficult to handle that. But a good amount of difference and a good amount of compatibility is I think really important in a relationship. So I try to help couples understand this and work with it in a safe way. And it's incredible, because when you start to work with difference and you start to work as a team, it actually is so empowering for couples, and they feel so hopeful and so grateful, I guess, to actually be able to come together, but know that they're different people, and that's okay. And it actually serves the relationship in a positive way.
This is very cool to think about, this idea of compatibility. And I think we've sometimes heard this excuse or made this excuse like, oh, we don't have that much in common. And you're saying, well, you don't want too much in common, because then it's a boring relationship. And then the differences, sure, we can definitely imagine like people who are polar opposites, but you figure, well, if I met someone that was really big into like camping or the outdoors, like that could kind of push me into new activities and adventures and opportunities for growth. And so I like this
Mhm.
idea of the teamwork. And so if there's some couple that comes to you and they're fighting, or there's maybe the honeymoon period's over, or a 7-year itch, we all have these phrases, right? You mentioned like rose colored glasses. There's a reason you
Absolutely.
have all these things, because it's so common. We're not unique if we're having these relationship problems. And so if you could have this couple and you say, okay, well, let's work on teamwork, like what does that mean? Or what do couples think of that? Is that like a shared plan for the future, or just when these couples are like fighting each other and it's time to make the teamwork happen? How does that occur?
I guess what I encourage couples to do is to check in with each other. So some people are good at that automatically, and they will talk about issues and they can manage to do that in a safe way. But a lot of people don't know how to do that in a safe way, and they don't check in together. So if we don't do that with the energy of difference or the potential conflict between us, it can become like an infection within the relationship. And either people will ignore the infection. So some people might just ignore that and go, no, that's not happening. Or people will start fighting with each other all the time, and they'll just start fighting, and they forget actually why they fell in love and the positive things in the relationship, and they'll just focus on the negatives. So what I try to encourage people to do is to check in with each other, and through having a regular meeting, just as you would in a workplace, just as you would with most people, parents with their children, just check in. And but to do it in a way of actually setting some rules of engagement, because some people don't know how to do that in a safe and respectful manner. So it might be asking people to actually set up a time and a space where they're not going to be interrupted, and to agree upon a time that the meeting's going to go for, and then to actually talk about in the meeting. The first meeting would be to write down some rules of engagement. What is this meeting going to be that they both agree on? How are we going to conduct these meetings? So it might be, how long are the meetings going to go for? how regularly are we going to have meetings? Where are we going to conduct these meetings? So some people might not just want to sit down and talk together. They might want to go for a walk together, because that might feel less, I guess, less confronting. But I guess the thing about doing an activity while you're doing this, as long as it doesn't distract you from the actual focus of the meeting, because that's the most important thing of this. But then you might actually, within that, and it's probably a good idea in the first meeting to write these things down and to sign them at the end, because both parties sign them. And then to have these with you when you conduct the meeting. So when someone might go off track, you can say, actually, remember these. So just as you would when you're playing a sports game, you have rules. So, and some of those rules might be, okay, everyone has equal time and equal turns to express their issues, and it's one issue at a time. It might be using open and neutral language, practicing reflective listening, having an exit strategy in place. So despite our best intentions, we might start a meeting and you might realize quickly into the meeting that actually I'm not in a good headspace or an emotional space to conduct this meeting. So it might be to take a break, or it might be actually, let's stop this meeting, but to make a time and a space to revisit this meeting again. So, and also, I guess one of the other things is I always like to, because we're conducting and we're creating a safe space and a respectful space, it's like to also, I think, share with the energy of love and gratitude. I think that's a really nice place to come from too. So that's the sort of things that I would encourage a couple to do, to work with each other to become a team. So work through adversity to become the team.
That's great. This is a helpful, interesting techniques that you've developed here, because just a lot of what you mentioned is I can see how it, of course, it doesn't solve the problem overnight, but by having the rules of engagement and writing them down, it keeps both parties from kind of deviating, right? And even if the meeting does get too heated, too stressful, then you can say, hey, well, we can reconnect at a later date, but just keep the communication going, because if you don't, then the infection will stay there and get ignored and it will spread. And that's a great helpful analogy that, well, when the relationship is sick, you don't always really see it visually, and you don't always really know the cause, but you know that like something must be done, right? You need to get to that cause, and maybe don't just
That's
put a
right.
band-aid on it, don't treat the symptom, get to that root cause. And so in this conversation that we're having here, right, you coach these couples, you help people out with these energy exchanges and self-awareness and the teamwork and the meetings. But I want to make sure in these last few minutes that we focus on something that really just lights you up, or that you think is really important. So in this conversation you and I are having about couples counseling and relationships and psychology and all these subjects, is there a missing hidden question in our conversation that I should be asking you, I just don't know what to ask you?
Um, I don't, not really, actually. I guess one thing that's a big driving force for me and what I feel very passionate about is my spirituality. And so I think that for me in this work that I do contributes a huge amount to, I guess, my overall optimism about life and positivity about life. And I guess for me, that's been a massive part of my life ever since I was a child. Just, I guess, believing in a higher power, and for me, that's God, and not in a religious sense. It's just for me in a spiritual sense, and guess I guess that gives me enormous faith and trust, and I think that's something that I use to inspire not only myself but other people, and I feel that that's probably the major driving force within everything that I do. And I just can't express enough how helpful that is to not only my life, but I feel that it touches other people's lives too. And whether they believe in a higher power or they have a spiritual belief, it's not of it doesn't really matter, because it's more about, I feel, being an example to people, and also the fact that I think with my work too, all of the things that I do, or all the things that I talked about with people, I do them all myself, and I believe that it's really important to be the role model for all of that. So I would never ask someone to do something that I don't do myself, and also that I've also been through some very difficult times in my own life. I've been through relationship breakdowns. I've been through some terrible mental health issues that I've had to overcome myself, and I think that it's just made me such a better person and the best version of me, and I continue on that self-growth path as well. And I guess that's something I guess that I probably have to add.
Okay, well, great. So you don't have it all figured out like the rest of us, and you're still going through your stuff, and you've seen some things, but you're here to make that positive change in the world. And I'm 100% with you as far as the need to have that spirituality, that higher power in whatever form that manifests for you, because otherwise life is too dang hard, right? Just to figure, oh, well, it's all about me. But if you say, well, there's
Mhm.
more to it, it seems to help with that moral compass and with that the driving force and the reason why and the helping others. And it's great that you're in this profession because you can help others. And if someone says, man, this technique that Melanie Smart laid out for me, it sounds great. I want to find out more about her and her services and what she does. What are those services and how can someone contact you?
Well, I actually obviously work as a psychologist, and so I'm contactable by email at the moment. I'm not actually I don't have a website or any sort of social media. I'm not very much into social media personally. I obviously see it has its place. And I have toyed with the idea of getting a website, and that may be something that I do in the future. But at the moment, it's just my email. So if anyone has any questions or wants to reach out, I do Zoom sessions with people. Um, but I'm really open to receiving people's feedback or questions through my email, which is Melanie_Jane13 at hotmail.com.
Very nice. And so if you need that help, if you want to meet on Zoom, we live in this day and age, this world now where you someone vibes with you, jives with you, and you say, "Hey, this is someone I think can help me or me and my partner." Then you can meet on Zoom and be accessible anywhere, right? No matter the country or the location. And so if you want to get that conversation started with Melanie, well, there's two things, right? There is the book that she's in with Pat Mesiti. You can find that by searching The Turning Point on Amazon. But she really wants you to email Melanie_Jane13 at hotmail.com and tell Melanie that you heard her on Pat Mesiti's best-selling author podcast and that you'd like to meet, schedule a session, and see if she can help. And whenever that social media or the website set up, Melanie, we'll just add the link under the video. So maybe get a future date that's underneath here. But get that conversation started because Melanie Smart works as a psychologist and relationship guide to help couples understand and transform the energy of conflict into connection through conscious communication. And she's here to offer you this clear path to reawaken your connection, to live a more fulfilling relationship from love and gratitude. And if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, if you don't like the path that you're on, and you need some of this outside help to tap into what she's been speaking about, the self-awareness, the ability to change, communicate with your partner, they all sound like simple concepts on the surface, but when you do it, you find yourself just hitting those same barriers. Well, you need outside help, especially someone like Melanie Smart, who helps couples communicate, connect, and grow. And you can and should email her at Melanie_Jane13 at hotmail.com. And while we're doing that, And before I let you go, Miss Melanie, it's time for the scary part of the podcast where I try to stump you. I try to put you on the spot by asking about a fun quote or lesson that has served you. So, what comes to mind as far as a fun quote or lesson? And it looks like Melanie dropped off, so we won't be getting that quote or lesson. But what we know about Melanie is at the end of her book, The Turning Point, she says that each one of us has the power within to transform our differences and create healthy, happy relationships that thrive. If she can do this, you can too. You are truly worthy of this. So let's think about that as we email Melanie_Jane@hotmail.com. And in the meantime, subscribe and watch the other episodes of Pat Mesiti's best-selling author podcast.com. We'll see you there. And thanks, Melanie, for showing up and helping us out.